what Bungie decided was we can't do this anymore. This is just too much. This is too hard for us to do. The tools that we work with are really hard to deal with. It's hard for us to make this much content. It's just hard making content in general. And they said, we are going to do a drip feed of smaller stuff, and we're going to put up the Eververse, sell microtransactions, and make money that way. And Activision said, okay. It was part of their renegotiated deal. And they got to a point where they didn't have to be cranking out as much content. And now they're back to the same pattern where they have to crank out these DLCs and just be making content constantly. And of course, because of the big contract they signed with Activision, Bungie is still on the hook for like a Destiny 3, whatever that is going to look like. So you got to think that even right now, there are people, I don't know if you guys heard, that Bungie just put out a podcast a couple weeks ago. And on it, Luke Smith now talks about how his title now is like director of the Destiny franchise. Or something like that. So you got to think that even right now, they're still thinking about what's next. And there's only, I don't know exactly how many people are doing what, but there's different teams, and some are still working on Destiny 2. Others are thinking about what's coming next, expansions, future games. So there's just so much that they have to do. It's easy to see how a company with this much pressure, with this much ambition, with this much of Activision expecting certain revenue targets from them, it's just so much, and it's easy to see how they might make compromises and do things that don't seem to make sense to us, but might be necessary for them to even ship a game at all. Streamlining things, just doing some of the things that people don't like. Another aspect of all this is that with Destiny 2, they wanted to make a game that new players could come in and play because they desperately needed to appeal to new players. And that's one of the things that's been this ongoing tension, is that like Destiny 2, as it shipped, the original version of Destiny 2 is really appealing if you're a new player. And if you're someone who's like a casual player and only wants to play the campaign and then maybe a couple of things afterwards and some PvP and then moves on to something else. But if you're a hardcore Destiny player, like us, like we all are, and like the people who post on the Destiny Reddit are, if you're someone who's used to playing hundreds and hundreds of hours, then Destiny 2 is way less appealing to you. So that tension has always been there. And like, these are not, it's easy for armchair Reddit analysts to propose solutions to a lot of problems, but oftentimes it's executing on those ideas is a lot more difficult than people really think. So that was my kind of long-winded answer to how could this possibly happen. I think there are so many possible factors here, and there's so many explanations, and it's not like even people at Bungie, if you ask someone at Bungie, like, how did Destiny 2 ship the way it did, they wouldn't be able to answer you because there's so many different complicated factors and so many hundreds of people working on this game, and all of them are making their own decisions and doing their own things. Even something as simple as communicating among the studio, just basic basic things, basic ideas of what the plan is. That itself is such a challenge that just putting together this massive game and keeping it going is just unfathomable to me, at least. So not to sound like a Bungie shill or whatever, but I do empathize a lot with the problems that they have to deal with, and it can't be easy. There are a lot of challenges. It's technically a sequel. It definitely feels like Destiny 1.5 from a hardcore player's perspective. It's kind of a bummer. I was hoping for more. I was hoping for something better. I really enjoyed what Destiny 2 I did play. I love the campaign. I thought that was great. The music is astounding. The overall experience that I had for 60 to 80 hours of Destiny 2 was great. And then I tapered off in a way that I never did of Destiny 1. And I think that there are a lot of reasons for that. One of them actually is that they split up the player base now with the PC release, and some of my raid group is playing on PC. And I don't have a gaming PC yet, so I can't join them yet. But it hasn't been as sticky for me as Destiny 1 was. And it does make me wonder about the future for the Destiny franchise and if other games will take its place. And I don't know. I'm very curious to see what happens. To answer your question, yeah, it definitely felt like Destiny 1.5 when I first saw it, when I first played it at E3 of this year, and then again when I played the real version, it just felt like more Destiny. The fact that so from a player's perspective, something like the fact that there isn't even a new race is to me just like disconcerting. It's like weird. It's like how can you release an entirely new game and not even have a new race? But then from the part of me that is like, oh, I actually understand how this stuff works. It's of course there isn't a new race. They had to crank this thing out in such a short amount of time that the sheer amount of work it would take to make a new race and make it fun and make it interesting and introduce players to it was just like inconceivable to them. They had to deal with all this other stuff. So yeah, I get it. I get why it is Destiny 1.5, but it definitely is. Where they got it right is, yeah, the story is much better. Just focusing a story around a villain was smart. They did it in Taken King, and it worked. And then they did it again for D2, and it worked really well. There were some just really cool missions, just some excellent like Halo caliber mission design in the story campaign. I think that a lot of the production values are better than ever. The shooting still feels as good as it ever did. But then there are some big mistakes, I think, that have contributed to me bouncing off the game. One of those is the weapon system. I think I've gone back and forth on the fact that your primaries and secondaries are pretty much the same thing now, and ultimately settled on the fact that I hate it, and the fact that I just can't use like sniper rifles and shotguns in PvE anymore really bums me out. It's great for PvP, but then with PvP, the fact that they decided to put everything into playlists and that you can't even choose what mode you want to play anymore, it just really bummed me out and made me think, you know what? I mean, this game just wants to waste my time if I have to cycle through playlists just to get the stuff that I want to play. If I just want to play elimination or whatever. I could go on and on. Obviously, the microtransactions are the biggest thing that the community is in uproar over at the moment. It's easy to envision a scenario where Activision was like, hey, you need to hit these targets, do it however you want, because I think Activision gives Bungie a lot of freedom to do things their own way, so long as they hit their deadlines and hit their targets. And so Bungie says to themselves, okay, we need to get more people buying things. How can we do that? Creating all these cool emotes, finding ways to get people buying it more, maybe taking away some things that were there before and dangling them in front of players as microtransaction bait. And yeah, it's easy to see a world where like it's not like the people of Bungie are evil. They just have to hit expanding targets. And it's not like the people at Activision are evil. They just have to make a profit on their game. It's literally their jobs is to serve to shareholders, increasing revenue numbers every single year. So we're talking about a system where it's if one party is not happy with the other will have to like make amends for that and find ways to account for that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know specifics. I don't know the numbers. I don't know exactly what Bungie's revenue targets are. But anytime you see something like, anytime you see a microtransaction store like gradually taking over more and more of a game, or like gradually expanding to be more and more appealing, you can safely assume that that's because the company behind it has numbers that they have to hit, and they need a way to hit those numbers.